Here we go.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, joined by Ken Weave from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Rennie, and this is the Kenny and Rennie post-game show after a 4-0 win by the Winnipeg Jets over the Philadelphia Flyers. A little bit of a different format for the show here because your favorite Kenny and Rennie host, Sean Reynolds, left his computer at home and doesn't have the capabilities to properly run the show. So Ken has to hop in right off the bat. We don't get to hear his kick-ass music, which is like made it through 79 games, and I fumbled the baton right at the finish line when it matters most here, Ken. I'm devastated with myself, but
Don't be.
Oh well, that's how it goes. Hopefully people will be able to live with it. The other part about this is I'm not going to be able to navigate the chat room as I usually do. So don't think I'm ignoring you, everyone. Feel free to make as much fun of me as you want to down the stretch here throughout the show, like you always do. And feel free to chime in. And hopefully Kenny, yeah, there you go. Kenny's in charge. My hands are literally tied. Ken can do whatever he wants this entire time. Dance, monkey, dance is how this is going to go. But here, we'll pick it up, and I'll just start off and give my quick take on the game like I usually do. Ken, I thought it was a tidy bit of business by the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, I don't think that they call this garbage time for a reason. There's not a lot you can glean from garbage. That Philadelphia Flyers team is not far off from being an AHL team. We ran a board during the game about all the key players on their roster that are out and done for the season. Never mind the fact that this is an organization that is third in the NHL in man games lost this year. I think they set a record for man games lost for a Philadelphia Flyers team, which says a lot for a rugged organization like this with players that play the way that Philadelphia Flyers do to have lost that many man games so far this season. But you can only play the teams in front of you, and I thought that the Winnipeg Jets did a very tidy job of doing what they knew would succeed against that team. They took a number of penalties. While it's the worst power play in the entire NHL, they didn't seem to be a lot of worry that came along with that. Their power play gives them their first 2 goals. They get an empty net goal. We talked with Dave Lowry before the game about what kind of opportunities he was going to provide Kyle Connor to try and get him to 50 goals. I thought it would be one of these questions that the coach shies away from. It was not at all. Dave Lowry said he's going to do everything he can. 50 is a special number. Dave Lowry wants Kyle Connor to get there, probably more than Kyle Connor does, based on the way Kyle Connor answers questions about what he's done. We can get into that. But the 2 power play goals, the empty net goal, that third goal, I thought the Jets showed a lot of learning, and that Blake Wheeler had almost scored on almost the exact same play right before that and figured out a way to get past the goaltender by just changing things up slightly on that third goal. We can dig into that as well. But to me, this was the Winnipeg Jets knowing what kind of game it was going to take to beat this Philadelphia Flyers team. Seriously undermanned, yes, Philadelphia Flyers team, but the Jets knew what was in front of them. I thought they handled it perfectly. Again, I don't think there's a lot of moral victories to be won in winning game 80 when you've been out of the playoffs for a number of days. And there's definitely no moral victories when you're getting that victory against a team that is potentially going to finish third last in the NHL the way things are going right now. But the Jets, as far as what they had in front of them, handled it, I think, as best as they could have.
Yeah, no doubt about that, Sean. A tidy piece of business. That's a good way to put it. You saw how happy Kyle Connor was for Eric Comrie, right? I mean, and this is stuff that's genuine. I mean, even hear Dave Lowry. We've heard Dave Lowry talk about Eric Comrie all year long, but this performance in particular and the battle right to the end, they got a late penalty that they had to kill off. To see a guy travel the road that Eric Comrie has traveled to get to his first NHL shutout was a meaningful event in what has been a tough season. And you know what? Before I really set into the buffet here, let's switch up the format just a little bit. We got Sammy the Scarf coming in, Sean. What do you think about that? Well, let's get him coming in right now. Coming in hot to a guy that's familiar with Eric Comrie prior to getting to the NHL level, and now being not only on the broadcast, but being between the benches to see it. Welcome to our good friend, Sammy the Scarf Cosentino.
There's the guy. I'm
Sammy.
What was
pretty
it like
much
in between the bench? We had a little conversation in the tunnel after you left the bench there. Pretty fast watching the game from down there, eh?
My goodness, it's really, really fast. And I've done 7 games this year. 4 of them have been on site. Columbus is a pretty high perspective. Ottawa, same thing, and then in Winnipeg earlier in this year with Arn Ryan in November. So to get down there and doing games intermittently, holy, is it ever fast. It's a lot of fun, though. What an amazing experience. I don't know how many of those experiences will be afforded to me here in the future, but a really cool experience, especially with 2 teams where I've seen a lot of their players grow up. Philadelphia goes back to Provorov, Sanheim, Konechny, Tippett, Zamula. I've watched Morgan Frost, all those guys kind of come up through the ranks from when they were really young. That was pretty awesome. And the same thing for, the flip side for Winnipeg and watching Comrie. I was really pulling for him, and I was very conscious of not saying anything about the shutout.
Yeah.
I didn't want to throw the Kenny and Rennie snow jinx on it. So
Sammy, look who's here. We got the YouTube scarf man is already in here, sending a few greetings. Greetings.
If you didn't bring in a scarf, Sam, you should rip the drapes off the window right now and throw them on, because you've built a reputation here.
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Got the Budweiser ready.
So Ken, you won't be aware of this. The people at home will be. But both Arn Ryan and Sammy were talking in the broadcast. They brought up the snow jinx that I've put on the city of Winnipeg, and I thought that they shouldn't be amplifying that one too much. I'm going to take a lot of hate for that, but there it is. There's the guy, Sammy the Scarf. Good to see you here, buddy. What's your biggest takeaway from tonight's game? There's not a lot you can take away. We've talked about it in this garbage time part of the season, but is there anything that you walked away from this game and piqued your interest?
Comrie for me all day long, and again, he's a guy I've watched grow up, and I've watched him go through these, being claimed, being let go, being traded, being claimed. That's really, really difficult on a young guy, and especially someone who's trying to establish himself. So, moving forward, it's a little bit like Spencer Martin in Vancouver. I mean, Halak was the backup this year. They signed Spencer Martin to a 2-year deal because they feel he's going to be a capable guy who's really worked hard to hone his game, and knowing that he doesn't have to come in and take those top line minutes, but can be a capable backup at a decent price. And I think that's what you're looking at with Comrie. You have Hellebuck, plays a ton, the most tenured guy in the league since he came into the league with those 380 games.
Oh, we have a freeze up.
As we've seen this
there
season,
we go. You're back. Yeah.
Sorry,
go on.
As we've seen this season, you can't let things get too far away from you, or there's no getting them back. And so I think he's established himself now as a legit NHL backup. Do it at a price that's going to be able to fit in the cap. So what do we got? Stonewall. Come on, Stonewall.
Sam's original scarf is feeling betrayed. Where is the KNR divorce lawyer?
Yeah.
Tremendous.
I really want to see Connor get to 50. I mentioned as he went out there, on the kill with the emptying of the 6-on-4. I'm like, yeah, there's purpose to this pitch for sure. And sure enough, he ends up getting that goal, which is fantastic. It's going to be tough, but this guy, he has the ability to do it. 50 is a really cool mark. You talked about it, Sean, that Dave has put that on his radar. Same thing with Pierre-Luc Dubois getting to 30. Same thing with Ehlers getting to 30. Comrie getting his first shutout. So you have to find some silver linings, and those things were all, those goals were either achieved in Comrie's part or soon to be achieved by Dubois and Ehlers, and maybe to be achieved by Kyle.
Well, what I liked about that, Sammy, sorry, Ken, what I liked about that, and I want to get into a little bit of, what we can talk about with the coaches meeting, because the one thing that you've got a really good relationship with Dave Lowry. I remember being in Columbus and we were doing a game on the road together. Ken, you were there as well. And it was the night before we had a night. You'd gone home early. First time I've ever seen that from Sam. I thought you were getting soft, to be honest. That's what I was thinking.
Hey, Reynolds, that's called commitment, Reynolds. That's called commitment.
Well, I guess I got no commitment then, Ken.
Just like driving to Brandon on an off night to go see a Wheat Kings Red Deer Rebels game. Commitment.
Nice.
Sure, but it was interesting because I was at the what's it called, the Char Bar. There is the place where we like to hang out, and the Jets coaches were out that night before, the one where you went in early, and Dave Lowry saw me and he was asking right away where Sammy was. I know that you've covered the WHL beat and you had a good relationship with him there. We had a really good conversation inside the coaches room today, best one I've experienced in the coaches room with Dave Lowry so far. But what I loved about that from him was often the stock answer when you're asking about, players hitting personal accolades is, it's easy to default and say, this is about the team. If they get there, they get there. Dave Lowry wants these guys to hit these marks. He's working hard for them to hit those marks. He's coaching in a manner that is going to give them that opportunity. And I just wanted your take on, the kind of the relationship between coach and players and what you can kind of earn with your players by taking that approach rather than kind of hiding from it and saying, if we get there, we get there.
Yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see people be candid. And Dave, even early on in our relationship, he's tight to the vest, and you kind of got to, vet yourself and be around and show that you're putting in the work. And I think, those relationships, sometimes they take long to build. It was like that with Dale Hunter when I first met him. Boy, was that a tough egg to crack. Or even Brian Kilray with the Ottawa 67. Long before that, but it does go a long way. I mean, listen, everyone's saying that Dave's not going to be back. I think it's still a case where it's to be determined. But in that situation, you're not thinking about what's going to happen to you. You have to think about the task in front of you. So, pointed out winning as being a key thing that you wanted to achieve. Hey, we're preparing the same way. We want to go out and win games, but also being mindful of those really important personal milestones. And I think that's a cool thing to have, because why would you, in this time where the game is meaningless in terms of points in the standings, would you kind of throw those things aside and not give those guys the opportunity to achieve something that 20 years from now they can look back and say with their kids, hey, I scored 30 this year, or I scored 50, or I got my first career shutout, or whatever else. So I think those are hugely important things. And it's funny because hockey's it's a small world, and if you never know who people are going to consult about coaching jobs. Should Dave move on? Who are they going to consult? Do they talk to players, trainers, coaches, guys who play for them, whatever else? You want to be able to have that in your bank as someone who's mindful of what's going on around them. And I think it's cool to see some of those things on their way to being accomplished.
Now, Ken, I want to ask you this question because I find it interesting. I'm sure it means something to a player that the coach is looking out for them, trying to have them hit their benchmarks. But I'm starting to think that Kyle Connor may take no joy at all from hitting benchmarks the way that he responds sometimes to his goals on the ice, but definitely in the media afterwards. What did you take away from his comments as he, has launched into the best single season of goal scoring in Jets history, and now the best single season in points producing in Jets 2.0 history? He had a great line when we asked him about it.
Yes, indeed, he did, Sean. And let's just find it right now. First and foremost, I liked what I heard. You guys know me by now. It's not like I'm popping champagne because I hit a certain amount of goals or something. You expect it out of yourself. You put in all the hard work, and so when the results come, you're ready for it. You're ready for this stage. I know Sammy loves this too. Kyle Connor is very much from the camp of act like you've done it before, even when you haven't done it before.
Yeah.
So that's what I see from Kyle Connor. I don't think that the milestones don't mean anything to him, but they don't mean anything to him in the moment. I think that when Kyle Connor goes home, whether he gets to 50 or not, he wants, let's not make any mistakes about this. Kyle Connor wants to be able to say he's a 50-goal guy at some point in his career, and he's also going to want to say that he put up triple digits in points. That's not going to come this year, but 92 points is absolutely exceptional, and no matter what he finishes with, this is honestly one of the best seasons in Jets, even Thrashers history. So no matter, and again, we're not just basing that on the points. We know that Kyle has to work on his defensive game. He's made some strides, but he still has some work to do. He's become a very good penalty killer, but this guy is an elite, high-level assassin when it comes to goal scoring. Like, one of the best in the game. And people forget, there are more than 700 players in the NHL. He is a top 5 goal scorer in the National Hockey League. Top 10 at worst, but I would put him in the top 5 with anybody that's in that class. And those are world-class players. So I love what I hear from Kyle Connor. He's grown a lot in terms of his maturity, but we've talked about this ad nauseum. It's the consistency that blows you away, because we all know this. You can't be a 90-point player if you take 2 weeks off at a time. This guy hasn't even taken 2 or 3 games off at a time. That only dip this year, that 5-game stretch where he didn't score, I think it was because he was playing so much. He didn't have his legs in those games. And even in that stretch, he still had 2 assists in those 5 games. So his season's been absolutely dynamite on almost every measure. Yes, could he improve still? Absolutely. And that's the beauty of Kyle Connor. This isn't the ceiling for him, even though he just put together one of the best seasons in franchise history.
What if
Sammy,
he wasn't a COVIDian?
He would have hit it, no problem.
He'd have hit his 50 if he wasn't a COVIDian.
Sammy, this is a debate that rages on here in Winnipeg. I want an outsider's perspective on this. Do you hear enough about Kyle Connor? I mean, another way of asking it is this an underrated player? People in Winnipeg feel like he's criminally underrated. Dave Lowry talked about it at the podium today, went out of his way to bring up the words lady and Bing side by side, saying there should be a lot of talk about this. I honestly think Kyle Connor's going to win that trophy in a runaway, so I don't necessarily think this is one of these situations where he's hard done by in any way. But based on what you've seen from him when you cover him, based on the numbers that he has put up, does Kyle Connor get enough press outside of Winnipeg, or is this guy criminally underrated?
Well, he's underrated, but it's starting to come. It's starting to come, and that's why I think 50 is an important mark, because once you get to 50, then people don't turn a blind eye anymore. So I know that coming in November, and doing that game in November, obviously when I started to follow the team a lot more, previous to doing the games and then the games themselves, I became acutely aware of just how good he is. So I paid attention to him and watched him a little closer. And man, have I ever been impressed. Like, to be able to put him on the PK and be a threat on the PK, huge. See a guy score 45, 46, hopefully 50, huge. But man, the way he slithers around the ice, he never really takes full solid contact. He's always around the puck. He is a threat every time he gets it. And he's a double threat in the power play, because on that flank there, if he's not a shooter, as we saw tonight, he plays catch with Dubois, gets it to Dubois, he backs his rear end of the net, gets the puck past Sandstrom, so he's a dual threat there. But I've done my best, not for any other reason. I really don't know Kyle at all. It's just to try and make people aware in some of the studio shows that do sports that saying, hey, wait a second. If you go back and look at the numbers since, I think it was 2016-17, he is in the top 6. There's no denying it. He's in there with the Matthews world. He's in there with the Draisaitls. That's pure, that's fact and numbers. So that's really cool to see this guy perform at that level. Continue to add layers to his game by adding the PK element. I know we talked a little bit about his defensive game. Sure, that's going to come along, and that might not be something that you're ever really overwhelmed with. But if adding that extra layer of being able to PK, I think it's huge. So, is he underrated? Yes, but I think people are starting to recognize that he's an elite goal scorer in the league.
Just one quick one here, Sean, before we move to something else. The one thing about Kyle Connor that we notice is something that we've seen, Sammy, with the Leafs and with Austin Matthews. He's added the back pressure element. I mean, is he in perfect position defensively all the time? No, but his back pressure and using his speed on the defensive end is something that you've seen, and that's all you want to see, right? Effort, and again, you got to win a few more board battles, but when you get that, when you're not just going fast, there's a lot of offensive players in the NHL, one-way players. Kyle's not that anymore. He uses his speed on the backtracking element. That's something the Jets need to get better as a whole, but it's something that we've seen there. And then the last thing for me on this subject, it is criminally unfortunate that the NHLers did not go to the Olympics this year, because if Kyle Connor was on the left side with Austin Matthews, we
Yeah.
wouldn't be having a discussion about Kyle Connor being underrated, because he would have been lighting it up down there. I think that's my personal view.
That would have been one heck of a coming out party, no doubt. I'll just say this to add to the point that you were making, Ken, about, I know analytically he's got his issues defensively. One of the things, though, that I think if you're Dave Lowry and take a look at what Kyle Connor goes and does out on the ice every night, is there's no mistaking the effort that he puts out there. And there was a moment, and Sammy, maybe you'll remember what this moment, because we did a replay of it, and it kind of opened my eyes a little bit. It was either Frost or I believe it was Tippett, but it was a neutral zone puck, and there was a little bit of a moment there where you could see Owen Tippett thought that maybe he was going to get that puck, and Kyle Connor scooped in, got that puck, and was gone. And I felt like I was watching the screen, and you could kind of see the look on Tippett's face was like, okay. I mean, to me, Tippett, I'm not saying he's brand new. I'm not saying he's a rookie, but he hasn't been in the league for the longest of times. Definitely, he hasn't been in so long that he couldn't learn some lessons here or there. But for me, in that moment, there was a little bit of that's the effort you've got to put in if you're going to win puck battles against that guy in the neutral zone. As Kyle Connor scooped that puck, went down one-on-one, and got a good shot off. Effort always seems to be there. And down ice, back pressure, like you said, Ken, he's always going 1,000 miles a minute. And it's got to be something that's easy to point to as a coach and say, listen, if he can do that, you got the rest, you can do that out there. Ken, did you want to do a read?
Yeah, sure. Let's start with Comrie in there. Our good friends at Comrie and Credit Union, Sean. We know a lot of folks are getting fired up for house hunting season, and some of you are also looking to refinance your mortgage. I know both of us have done this, or renew your mortgage in the last couple of years. For us, we renewed last year in April, and it was such a smooth process. We went in and saw Janessa, got everything locked down, got a great rate on that 5-year plan. I mean, just such an easy process. And if you can't go in to do it during COVID or anything else, you can do it digitally as well. What about your experience, Sean, on that front?
Well, same deal. We called up. We wanted to lock down a little earlier because we weren't so sure about the rates. But it seems every time that we do renegotiate our mortgage, there's a project to be done around the house because Rennie's a little bit of a handyman, guys. I didn't know if you knew about that, but add a little bit of money to the mortgage and do a little bit of work on the basement. Always a really easy process. We've been so happy with them and know that if it comes to redoing our mortgage again, we'll be going right back to the same spot. Ken, let's talk quickly. I want to move to Nick Ehlers because one thing, and there's a whole bunch of stuff to get in.
Yeah.
We'll get to what he said earlier today. But I want to start with him saying what he said, which was basically a calling out. He called the Jets season a wasted season. He wasn't afraid, like I'd said during the broadcast, the truth serum is flowing in the Winnipeg Jets room these days. But what I loved about it is he said that, and then he came out and he absolutely backed it up. Said these last 3 games are an opportunity not to show the fans that the team is sorry, but that they could be much better than they are. I love it when a guy like Nick Ehlers backs up his words, and that's exactly what he did tonight.
Yeah, best player on the ice, and I don't think it was close. Like, with all due respect to some of the other Jets that played well, play driver at his absolute finest tonight. No, it wasn't one of those 9 or 10 shot attempt nights, but Ehlers was absolutely flying, finishing with 2 shots on goal and 6 attempts. His speed, that play that he makes to set up Wheeler for the old easy tap through the 5-hole, that's just exceptional. We talk about his zone entry prowess all the time, but his ability to cut to the middle, then cut wide, burn out downside the lane, and then whip it through the defenseman, just absolutely tremendous. Great finish by Wheeler for his 15th, but that wasn't the only time. He did that one other time, and I know some folks are like, oh, it was a backdoor tap, an easy one for Wheeler. That was an exceptional play by Ehlers, but if you're on the right wing going to the back post, that first pass that he couldn't convert went right through the feet of the defenseman. The problem for Wheeler, you know it's coming, but you don't see it until the absolute last second, and it's almost impossible to get it up in that situation. You just have to one-touch it, and that's what Wheeler did, and it was a great save that was made. But man, Ehlers absolutely flying all night. A couple of great chances. I mean, he rattled that one off the post on the 5-on-3 and then stuck with it. Crossbar. But he sticks with it, gets his 28th. Sean, we know our good friend Hustler has a bet on Ehlers hitting 29. Now he's within 1 with 2 to go. He's rubbing that ticket. He's even in Vegas right now. He's rubbing that ticket together and ready to fire it up on the cool bets. And again, we know that soon you will be rubbing it in that my Stanley Cup pick is not even going to make the playoffs. Possibly. Who, me? But I said to Remus about 6 weeks ago, maybe even longer, that Nikolai Ehlers was going to hit 29. And again, you don't want to get overconfident, and premature celebration never suggested, but I'm pretty confident Ehlers is going to hit that number. Man, I was so impressed with him. What about you, Sammy? What stood out with you in terms of Ehlers' play here this evening?
His feet. Like, his speed is really good, but his ability to kick pucks around, stop pucks, move pucks with his feet is really, really impressive. So, yeah, it comes from the football background. Got to make sure we use football, right? But that's what's the other part is the comments he made. And he got going on a bit of a tangent about not playing in the Olympics, playing for the Danish team, playing with his dad, playing for his dad over there, getting to see his buddies, and he got away from, and he realized it pretty quickly, and he walked it back a little bit by saying, but by the way, we have 3 games, including tonight, to play. And so rather than, packing up the bags and being ready to get in the plane and go play in the Worlds, he was present, he was in the moment, he performed really well. His feet are amazing, his speed's amazing. And honestly, proof's in the pudding. You look at the Jets, they're a better team with him in the lineup. Pure record-wise, they're a better team with him in the lineup, and they missed him dearly when he was out with that knee issue.
I'm glad you brought up the feet, Sammy, because it allows me to. I was angling during the broadcast to try and go drag up Blake Wheeler's goal from the last game that they played. Yeah. Because if you watch that play, so this was Kenny, funny little moment here, had a little bit of a debate with Coach Lowry. I asked him, you were there, I asked him during the last press conference after the game against Colorado, if that goal that Blake Wheeler scores, which he gets the puck in front off Nick Ehlers' skate, whether that was a fluke or not. Dave Lowry at the time said, well, he's, soccer player, he's got good feet, all that kind of stuff. But in the dressing room, office, he wasn't giving it to me. He was, I think he thought that I was full. He may have been listening and hearing my out there theories sometimes and thought, yeah, it's another one of these Sean Reynolds theories. I stand by it. I wanted to drag it up, Sammy, because you were talking about it, and we showed great video of him using his feet all night. This is an amazing play, that last game. It's a shot from the point, whereas most players are either trying to, what's the instinct? You either get out of the way so that it gets on net, you brace yourself for impact. Nick Ehlers kicks a puck that is coming straight at him from a shot, redirects it, kicks it straight onto the stick of Blake Wheeler into a spot where Blake Wheeler can get a stick, and it's a goal. I contend this is no fluke. And I love that Sammy went there during the broadcast because we had great video to support it. But to me, this is a highly cerebral play. And while we're on Nick Ehlers' highly cerebral plays, this is one you were talking about, Ken, how he rings it off the bar and he still gets the goal. This is a goal scorer's goal that he gets because he fires that puck off the bar, right? And then gets a similar shot from almost the same spot. Yeah. And where does the next one go? It goes underneath the arm. Why does that happen? I'll tell you exactly why it happens. Nick Ehlers puts one off the bar, is that close to scoring. That stays in the goaltender's mind. The goaltender is thinking he's going to get a second shot at this, and he's going bar and in. No, it is highly cerebral because Nick Ehlers in that moment knows that the Flyers goaltender is going to stick his arm out to try and cover off the post, and he goes not where his arm is, not where his arm is going to be, but where it was, knowing that the goalie is going to move. It goes right underneath the armpit and in the net. This is a crazy cerebral goal. These are these tiny little things that happen during the game that we just don't realize how amazing they are, how cerebral they are. You want to talk about the tiny little plays that make these hockey players the best hockey players in the world. Those are the little things, and most people wouldn't notice them. But in my mind, these are two cerebral plays that, I mean, lots of goal scorers. A guy like Alex DeBrincat does stuff like what I was just talking about. Patrick Kane can pull that kind of stuff off. Obviously, Austin Matthews. But add the foot element into it. Nick Ehlers is a cerebral hockey player who showed that off in spades the last couple of days, and it's been a beautiful thing to watch. Let's go do our Johnson group, Kenny.
Okay, 1 second here. Let's see if I can handle this activity. Here
you got to take the. You got to take two. There we go. Attaboy.
Here we go. One step at a time here. To our good friends at the Johnston Group, you won't find two businesses with the same challenges, but you will find 30,000 businesses with Chambers Plan employee benefits, proudly administered by our friends at Johnston Group. Chambers Plan is Canada's #1 plan for employee benefits because it evolves with the way you work and live. The plan is run as a not-for-profit designed specifically to support small businesses, and its unique pooling strategy keeps rates stable, so you won't have any surprises at your next renewal. Chambers Plan now comes with professional consulting on key financial, legal, and HR issues. And
telemedicine services.
There we go. Are also included with every health option. See how Chambers Plan can benefit your business by visiting chamberplan.ca.
Great stuff. Maybe they can help me insure my laptop so I can have it for the next time they come here. The other part about that,
just tremendous.
You missed out on the perfect comeback when I was telling you to do that.
God.
You should have stopped in that moment and said, Sean, don't tell me how to do your job. That would have been the perfect comeback for that. But
that's not my style. And as the commenters have pointed out, since we have been on the air, the Vegas Golden Knights are officially eliminated. The Dallas Stars lost it in overtime, but Vegas lost.
Dallas lost in overtime?
Yes, they gave up the
point,
3. But they're out because Vegas lost in the shootout. We don't. You can rub it in, but not right at the second. Let's quickly, before you get the rubbing in here. Let's go to Pierre-Luc Dubois in 28.
Yes.
Sam, you know Pierre-Luc Dubois. I'll let him do it in a little while.
It'll happen, Sam.
Before the show is over. Sam, what are you seeing from Pierre-Luc Dubois? Obviously, you know his pedigree. You saw him at the game in Columbus where I think we saw in the morning there were definitely some nerves for him going back there. The fact that he has hit a new high at 28 goals, 30 just around the corner. We know that talk of the new contract has got people a little bit nervous in this market. What are you seeing from him in terms of his game from this season? And then we'll follow that up by what you think that next. I mean, I've talked about what the next contract could look like. It could be as high as, north of $8 million, depending on the term. What do you see from Dubois, and where do you see his next contract potentially going?
Well, that's going to be a real challenging thing here because it's probably going to have to be a bridge. And then from the bridge, where do you go? Do you not want to do a bridge? What is it? How far are you willing to go with it, and how much? So, I think he's with a representation group that doesn't mind playing its hard ball, that recognizes they have a talented player and will probably want to take it to the max. But there's also something to be said about going and getting an opportunity where you can play with a clear head. And what's allowed you to be put in this situation where you can make a lot of money is this situation. So there has to be some respect for that. But looking at him, it's funny because he's going to end up probably as a 30-goal guy. He's going to end up at, that point per game pace, and he's going to end up as a guy who's a big body guy, play center, play the wing. Yet I still find some inconsistency in his game. And so he tends to be a guy who does a really good job repelling physical play, not necessarily initiating it, sometimes net front. And so what is it about that inconsistency? So where is it that you're going to find a layer to your game that if you're not scoring, how is it that you're going to be able to impact the game in a positive way? Throwing your body around, initiating that contact, being a guy who's creating all sorts of difficulty net front. and being a guy who obviously has to put up points, that if you're not scoring goals, you still got to be able to put up points. So it is a fascinating situation to watch. When you're the Jets, you acquire that player, and I think they acquired him in the hopes of being long-term and hoping that with his dad being around would be the part of the incentive to sign here long-term. So it still remains to be seen. He's got an agent who's, he's going to take it to the max for sure. But I think he's a guy you want to have around. I really do. And for the
Sammy, before you go, I want you to expand on why you think that it's going to be a bridge deal.
Well, if I'm in his situation, I can make a lot of money in a bridge deal, but I can also look further down the path and say we're going to get back to more regular times. The National Hockey League, with gambling and additional revenue streams through, might be esports and whatever else, but most importantly the gambling and the implementation of player tracking into different facets of the game, whether it's augmented reality, virtual reality, whatever it is going to mean, I think, huge windfall for the revenue generation. And what does that mean? Well, when you get into the situation with the salary cap having to go up and whatever else, I think in 3 years' time, you're going to be looking at a situation where the cap's going to go way up, and now you're going to have an opportunity to get a bigger piece of that cap.
So sorry, what would that look like? When you're talking about a bridge deal, are you talking about a bridge deal that would take him into unrestricted free agency? Because the Jets only have 2 years of team control with them, or is a bridge deal 1 year?
Maybe it's a 2-year thing, and then you put yourself in a situation where if things go sideways, you're going to be at a high number where you have to qualify, and if things go well, your end point is whatever the number is in the last year of that 2-year deal. So it's kind of it's a no-lose situation in my opinion, because if he continues to be a 30-goal guy, and there's no reason why he should on this team, that by the time that third year comes around, and again with the cap and the revenues going up, I think it'll be a much bigger windfall at that point. I think a 2-year deal also allows for things to honestly just to get back to normal, so we can understand what old normal used to be like, whatever that old normal looks like in terms of what we've gone through.
For me,
I don't know. What do you think, Weaver?
For me, it's too risky. I understand why the player would want it, but I just don't. I think for the Jets, it's got to be 4 minimum, and possibly 5 or higher, especially with the uncertainty swirling around Scheifele. If you're potentially moving Scheifele, you have to have Dubois at 5 or more. Maybe I agree with you. Maybe you don't want to go to 8 because there's room for the cap to move. But to me, I think they have to, before they do anything else, you have to get the situation. And I'm not saying if you can't sign him long term, you have to move him. But to me, I think that the potential is to do the 1-year deal. The 2-year deal is just too risky because you're allowing him to walk at 26 now. And to me, for a franchise that needs a pillar and a foundational piece, especially if Scheifele's on the move, you got to go at least 4 or 5 years for me. And again, you hope that he grows into it. I mean, the Jets have shown confidence. Yes, Ehlers was already an established player, same with Kyle Connor, but both of those guys have shown growth since their longer-term deals have been signed. But in order to get Pierre-Luc Dubois locked down, I think they're going to have to give him a contract that looks initially like a potential overpayment, but in 3 years down the road, it may look like a bargain, like the Kyle Connor deal. At the beginning, Kyle Connor's deal was fair, but now you're looking and saying, well, this guy's potentially a 50-goal guy. He should be making 9 or higher. So
what is it? What is it, Weaver? If it's a 4-year
for me,
deal,
it's got to be
north.
No, for me, it's north of 7 for sure. And if it's 5 or higher, it's got to be 8. Sorry, Sean, you were shaking at me, or what? The lawnmower?
So you're saying a 4x7.
Were you saying $7 million a year? Is that?
No, what I said on 4 years you might be able to get it closer to 7, but I think it's north of 8 on a longer term. Sean, you're looking at me great. The Jets are only buying 2 years of UFA on a 4-year deal. Anything over 5 has to be 8 or higher.
Agreed.
on a 4-year deal. It could be not at 7, but maybe potentially in the 7s. But that's why I still think it's 5 or higher, north of 8. And again, people will say, "Oh well, Scheifele's at 6 and change." Big deal. That's not relevant to these discussions. That deal was signed way too long ago.
Yeah.
And the cost of trying to replace Pierre-Luc Dubois is going to be higher than north of 8. But I get it. He's not established as a point-of-game player yet, but he has that to grow into. So you are running with some risk, but it's not as much risk as some people think because of the other things that he does in terms of drawing penalties. Yes, he takes too many right now, but I mean, it's going to be fascinating. We don't know how it's going to go. I still believe that Pierre-Luc Dubois signs long-term, but there is always the risk of that there's a 1-year deal and that they have to wait a little bit longer to see how the finances get stabilized, like what you're saying, Sam.
Well, here's the deal. You guys are both right. Sam brings up a good point in that he needs to round out his game. There's too many stretches where he seems to disappear and isn't able to play the game that he plays. But you're right on a bunch of other stuff, Kenny. You brought up the penalty factor. We talked about that in the broadcast tonight. It was a little bit of an eye popper for me. So we've known this for a while. Pierre-Luc Dubois leads the league in not only taking penalties, but in drawing penalties as well. And the graphic that we brought up, I thought was interesting because the only other player who's ever done that before is Tom Wilson. Well, what have we been talking about with Tom Wilson? I mean, this is a guy who has talked about going to Team Canada this year. This is a guy who affects hockey games when he plays. Now, do I think that Pierre-Luc Dubois is as tough as Tom Wilson is, as scary as Tom Wilson is? No, I don't. But I do think he's starting to get in there with that edge of like taking other teams off their game and people getting pissed off at him all the time, right? Yeah. He's got that edge to him. And oh, by the way, he's knocking on the doorstep of 30 goals, and he just set a personal record in a season here with 28 tonight. But that means that he was at 27 in another season. So he's on the cusp of being a multi-30 goal scorer, and he's only 23 years old. So here's the deal. If you're going to lock this guy down long-term, and to your point, Sammy, his representatives are the kind of guys who aren't afraid to play hardball. I'm going to go back to what we said during the last podcast, Ken. There is almost every single card in this negotiation is being held by his group. And the one last thing, Ken, do we know what his qualifying offer has to be?
Well, yeah, his contract this year is 6 and change. It's got to be higher, even though his AAV is only 5.5. I think it's closer to 6.75 salary this year, and it's not on the AAV; it's on the salary, is it not? I could be wrong on that.
You're right. You're right. So it all depends on the last year, and that's what happened with isn't Tkachuk the way that they structured his salary?
Right, yes.
It's around 7.25, but the last year he makes like $10 million or something like that, which means at the end of that deal, if you want to keep him around, it's because he has 1 year. The Tkachuk took his so that he's got 1 year after that. So that if he turns it into a 1 year deal, it's going to be in the neighborhood of 10 million or something like that. If I'm not 100% on that, I'm pretty sure we've got that though. Which is, so when you're talking about buying 4 years, Ken, at 7 mil, I don't see it because he can just arbitrate a year and walk away with near 7 million. Why lock himself down, especially to the point that Sammy is making about having the capacity to make more and more money down the road here? There's no reason for him to take himself off the market for the next 4 years, to give up 2 years of unrestricted free agency. I don't think the Jets hold the cards to get that done.
Totally understand where you're coming from, but without, even at 60-point player, are you getting 7? Are you sure you're getting 7 at arbitration? I know that he had a good year. I'm just saying. I'm just not sure that an arbitrator is awarding. I mean, again, 60 points is a very good season, so it's a coin flip for me at arbitration. But I agree. I mean, this is how I explain it when I was on with Jim the other day. So what I don't think people can ignore in this situation, we saw how the bad breakup from Columbus impacted Pierre-Luc Dubois. And if it falls off the rails here a second time, don't you think there would be hesitancy from the next team in terms of getting an 8-year deal locked down? I mean, I would be nervous about that. And again, I don't blame Pierre-Luc Dubois for wanting to get out of Columbus. Obviously, it wasn't a situation that was going to work, but at one point they were looking at 8x8. Those were the reports.
Yeah.
So to me, that shows that Pierre-Luc Dubois isn't looking to rush to free agency. He was ready to commit for the max, for stability and a significant raise. So that's why I think there's still a chance. And I know, without knowing what the direction is, of course Pierre-Luc Dubois is not going to sign today, but what if he hears something in the exit meeting that he likes? And to me, being tied to Kyle Connor is a massive incentive for Pierre-Luc Dubois, especially because he once had Artemi Panarin beside him, and then after that, all we heard about, the Columbus Blue Jackets have no scoring except for Cam Atkinson.
Life's not as fun.
So again, you might make more money, but you know what's fun? Winning. And right now they haven't done enough winning, but putting up points is fun. Not being asked constantly about those stretches that you talked about in terms of, going through the tough, 2 goals in 13 games or 14 or whatever it was. So again, I'm not saying this is an easy negotiation. What I am saying, I think there is willingness on both sides to find a number that makes it work. And again, of course, I agree with you. Player holds a lot of the cards. And one other quick one, I lost it here in the chat. Somebody said, Brisson also represents Sidney Crosby. So, Sidney Crosby never took the Penguins to the cleaners, but I know that was different because they were putting banners up. But
and he gets money outside the game with sponsorship that other players don't. Yeah. I guess the one last thing I'll ask you before we move on from this, Ken, is if he had a deal in place for 8x8, don't you think he's shown more to the degree that his group would expect that offer to go up? Hasn't he shown more and become a better player?
I think he's a better player, Sean, but he hasn't had the massive production increase, right? The 27 goals were in his second year in the NHL, and his numbers dipped after that. And I throw it last year as the outlier, but still, I think the 8x8, you were banking on the growth that would see him be a 30-goal, 65-point guy. So he's just starting to hit that now. So I understand where you're coming from, but to me, it's not like he went from 8 to 10. If Pierre-Luc Dubois kept up his pace from the start of the year, Sean, when he was at a point per game for a long time or right around it, then yes, now you're talking 9+. But because the point totals have kind of come back to the mean, maybe, I don't know, and that's why, to Sam's point, you might not want to go 8 years because you think that in the next 4 years, you could be hitting 80 points, and then you don't want to be locked in at that number because you want more. So it all comes down to if you want stability, you want to be locked at the hip with Kyle Connor for the next stretch of games. But man, it's a fascinating thing to monitor,
it is.
And what the number is going to be. This was similar to me, guys. When what was Laine going to get, and what was Connor going to get? We thought one of them was probably bridging, and one of them was probably going long term, and it probably went the opposite way of what we thought. So I think it's fascinating stuff, and I don't have a great. I would not be betting the mortgage on which way it's going to go, but I still think I'm still leaning towards long term. Whether that's 5, 6, or 7 or 8, I'm not sure. But man, fascinating stuff. Because we have Sam, we should just touch on Chaz Lucius before we're getting up to 50 minutes here, or do you want to go to somewhere else?
We will. I just wanted to say you had talked about betting the mortgage. I think that our sponsors, both the Johnston Group and Cambrian, would advise against that, Ken. So let's just get that on the record right off the bat.
I am.
Don't be so reckless, Ken. Reckless.
I would never be betting the mortgage here. We're just trying to keep her all afloat here. Come on, let's try to keep it afloat.
Let's go straight to Lucius, and Sam can let us know what the Jets have locked down with this player.
And just a quick one before you get going, Sammy. For the folks who maybe didn't hear before the game, just around 6 o'clock tonight, Chaz Lucius has decided to leave the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers program after his freshman season, where he had 9 goals and 19 points in 24 games. But he also hasn't played since February 12th, where I think he sustained an ankle injury or definitely a foot injury from blocking a shot. We know Chaz has had some injury issues the last couple of years, had dealt with a bit of a hand issue earlier in the year, still put up some good numbers, but he left school to sign a 3-year entry-level contract. A lot of folks, there's been some speculation, I think maybe from Chris Peters tonight, that the Portland Winterhawks are a potential landing spot. They own his Western Hockey League rights, but I would expect Chaz Lucius to be with the Manitoba Moose next year unless something changes. But we'll see. He'll be starting his pro development. This is a guy that I watched once live at UND this year. Really smart player, really good shooter, around the puck a lot, great hockey sense, can skate pretty well. His IQ is really high. Another one of those guys like Perfetti, right, Sam, where he's got the high IQ. But first of all, and again, I must admit, on a limited sample, I thought Chaz would be staying in school for his second year, especially because his brother Cruz has committed to the U of M program. But I think it's a smart move by him. We've seen some other guys come out after their freshman year, but some folks wondering if Chaz Lucius is going to be with the Jets next year. I don't see that it certainly would not be early, and I think Chaz is the kind of guy that needs a full year of development at the AHL level to get going. Sorry to go to the buffet, Sam, but what are your thoughts? First is on Lucius as a player, and B, the decision to come out and see how his progression is going to be as he turns pro here.
Well, the whole NCAA thing is interesting. And a guy like Chaz has missed a lot of games. I probably thought that he was going to stay 2 and maybe for 2. And if that's the case, then you might be looking at the Adam Fox situation. So when it comes to Chaz just in a bubble as a player, like, good on him. He's played 49 games the last 2 years. With the under-18 program, he missed most of his draft year. And then the 24 games he's got this year. Guy's played 49 games, just signed a 3-year entry-level deal. Like, that's pretty impressive. So is he a talented enough player to perform at that level? Yeah, I believe he is. But he is a guy, injuries are obviously a problem. Then you're looking at a guy who's a little bit slight of frame. So why not? Why not look at the Western Hockey League option if that is something that actually becomes available to him? In terms of what you're getting, though, is a guy who really is a play driver, but a shooter as well. So good job, like clean entries, does it with a good stick, hands are awesome, really has the ability to shoot the puck extremely well, very accurately. That's kind of his calling card. The skating, you hope that the injuries here haven't taken a bite out of his skating ability, because that was something he was very good at as well. But again, it's still a little bit of a risk just because of the few number of games he's played here in the last 2 years.
I absolutely love it that we got you on here, Sammy, to break that kind of stuff down. We're lucky to have you in doing that. I just wanted to tell a quick little story. Not only one of the things I love about working with you, one, you're one of the funnest guys I've ever hung out with in my life before. 2, I love the way you work the scenes behind there. So many of the players that we were talking to today are coming in, having conversations. You just do such a good job of covering the junior beat and covering off the prospects. And you get to know the guys so well that by the time they come to the NHL, they come over to you to see you. It's a pleasure to watch it. And then I just wanted to tell this story quickly. A member of the Flyers staff came over and wanted to introduce himself to you. And it was an interesting situation because he, one of his jobs is to get kind of people prepared for the draft, which is going to be big for Philly this year. And he said he usually just goes and finds your work and takes it and presents it to people because you do such a good job with what you do. And he's right. You absolutely do. So I just wanted to say to the people watching the podcast now, when you're cut, if you have any questions, or if we're ever doing a show, maybe if we do a draft show or something like that, Sammy is the guy to talk to. He gets it. He knows how to prognosticate the drafts. So you've come to the right place if that's what you're doing. As far as prognostication of series or potentially Stanley Cup finals or things like that, you've come to the right place as well. You just have to be very discerning with the panel that you see in front of you of who you listen to, because one of us picked the first place team in the West and the first place team in the East to meet in the Stanley Cup final. So it's looking pretty good for that person, for that pundit who broke that down. One of us picked a team that missed the playoffs in the West, and one of us picked a team that missed the playoffs in the East. So Listen, come here. You're going to get really good advice. You just got to know who to listen to, people.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Kenny,
enjoy it while you can. That's all I have to say. Enjoy it while you can.
Oh,
Enjoy
it feels so good. It feels so good.
Hey, a quick question before we shut her down. Are we on Sportsnet today?
What's that?
Are we on Sportsnet tonight?
What you mean?
No.
The show? Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I was just checking.
And we wanted to say thank you, Sammy and Singer, too, for giving Kenny and Rennie a shout out on the show. That was good stuff. That was awesome. Although Singer letting everyone know that I jinxed the city with all the snow. I think I'm going to have like a flaming bag of dog poop waiting for me on the doorstep when I get home. Kenny, do you want to bring the show to a close? Do the merch and all that stuff?
Yeah.
And remind them about tomorrow's show.
Sick.
Hang on 1 second. So first,
Well, here, while you're doing that, I just wanted to let everyone know I will be on Ken. I'm going to be in Montreal by that time, so I can do game 81 and 82 of our podcast. Close it out. I will be going to Montreal to cover the Guy Lafleur funeral, and then I will be heading down to the States to cover games 3 and 4 of the Calgary series. So as of right now, it's looking like it may be Dallas, but it may be Nashville. I'll be giving you some good food recommendations when I'm down there. I've got good places either way. But because of that, I got to square away on Thursday, which means we will not be having our long form show on Thursday. Stay tuned to see if we're doing that more going forward. Ken, do you have anything you want to close out?
And the other thing too, if you missed it, we had James Patrick on last week. Obviously I just mentioned earlier, Sam and I were at the Brandon Wheat Kings game last night with the Red Deer Rebels, and James Patrick was just absolutely phenomenal on our long form podcast. So that's a timeless classic. And John Chabot was great too, telling great stories about Guy Lafleur. And
John Chabot, eh?
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Yeah, nice.
And then
really
too,
good.
And now too, with the ice series being, it looks like they were extended, PA won tonight. So we did a special last week at the Ice Cave, teeing up that series. So now it's a 3-1 for the ice. But Sam and Peter Labardi has joined us for some great Western Hockey League insight. So if you're looking for that, I think there's still some couple of great things if you check it out at our YouTube channel. And for those of you who've supported the merch, thank you so much so far. If you're looking for a wake up mug or a Sean's headband t-shirt, go to shopnow.www.sportsnet.store. Pardon me. You can check out your merch there. Fantastic stuff. We appreciate everyone for your support so far. Fantastic.
Ken, I wanted to ask you, based on what happened tonight with the Vegas Golden Knights, were you a little uncomfortable reading that wake-up mug when it was up on the board there?
My God.
Not at all. Not at all.
The nose?
Sean, the best part about it is that the best part about predictions, you always get to make more. That's the beautiful part about it. I'm fairly comfortable with my record. Just this year, it didn't go very well. I had the Islanders and the Vegas Golden Knights to make the Stanley Cup final. Both of them will be out early. Both of them will be sure to have interesting off seasons ahead, much like the Winnipeg Jets are due to have a great off season ahead. And yeah, great stuff also too we talked about Ehlers earlier. Brendan Dillon and Nate Schmidt, fantastic again at the podium. And also too, I love the fact that Neil Pionk was so expressive. Sean, Neil Pionk hasn't spoken much this year. He doesn't say a lot, but when he speaks, it usually carries some weight. He started off with a funny joke about his nose being smushed by his visor when he got smoked by Nicolas Aube-Kubel. I love the fact that he chased him up the ice and got in his ear, did a little bit of barking. And then I love the fact that he was so honest, both about his team's play and about his own, calling it it's embarrassing when I look in the mirror. I love that type of reflection from an athlete. And that if a guy feels that strongly and shares it publicly, he's going to do something about it so that it doesn't happen again.
Right on. Okay, let's shut her down, Ken. Land this airplane.
Thanks for everybody joining us, and we'll see you after the game on Friday night. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.